My name is Natalie Morrison. I'm 27 years old, and the dinner was supposed to be entirely about my brother's promotion. 19 people, an expensive restaurant, everyone toasting Daniel. In the middle of it, my mother raised her glass, looked straight at me, and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, maybe one day you'll matter to this family too, Natalie. The table laughed. I said nothing. 15 minutes later, the door to that private dining room opened, and a man in a navy suit walked in asking for me by name. If you truly love and appreciate your parents, take just 1 second to subscribe to this channel. It means a lot to us. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which country aren't you watching from? My brother Daniel's promotion to regional director had been the only topic in our family group chat for 3 weeks. My mom booked the private dining room at a restaurant where the breadbasket cost more than an electric bill. 19 guests, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. I sat at the far end near the window, my usual spot, close enough to participate, far enough to escape notice. I was wearing a pale lavender blazer I'd bought 2 weeks earlier with my first payment from a private consulting client. Small, quiet, nobody knew about it. I'd stood in that dressing room telling myself I'd wear it somewhere that mattered someday. Dinner started beautifully. Daniel gave a humble, gracious toast, everyone clinked glasses, and I genuinely clapped. Whatever complicated history existed between us, I never wanted him to fail. I just wanted, once, for someone to notice I hadn't failed either. I spent 2 years quietly building an independent consultancy focused on operational restructuring for mid-sized businesses. No fanfare, because every time I'd tried mentioning my work at these dinners, the conversation moved on before I finished the sentence. It was during the second round of toasts, right after my uncle finished praising Daniel's work ethic, that my mother turned to me with that particular smile, kind from across the room, sharp underneath it. She raised her glass and said it loud enough for all 19 people to hear. Maybe one day you'll matter to this family too, Natalie. Delivered like a punchline, treated like one. My sister Rachel laughed first. My father didn't laugh, he smirked, which was somehow worse. A few cousins looked down at their plates. I sat there in my lavender blazer, hands folded in my lap, and I didn't cry, which surprised even me. Something in my chest went very still and very cold, the way water goes calm right before it freezes. I'd heard versions of this my entire life, comparisons, gentle dismissals, dressed up as concern, my independence treated as confusion instead of conviction. But hearing it said out loud in front of 19 people who would remember it landed differently. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, looked out the window at a stranger walking a dog, told myself to breathe, told myself it didn't matter. And that's exactly when the door opened. A man in a dark navy suit walked in, scanned the table with calm, deliberate eyes, and looked directly at me. He introduced himself to the room, Marcus Hale, CEO of Meridian Group, and said, with the entire table listening in absolute silence, that he needed to find Natalie Morrison for a signature on a contract before midnight. The silence that followed was the kind you can hear candles burning in. 19 people turned from him to me almost in unison. I watched my mother's smile dissolve slowly. My father set down his fork. Rachel stopped mid-sip. Daniel looked at Marcus like a man realizing the spotlight had just quietly relocated across the room. I stood up from my window seat, straightened my blazer, and walked toward the door with my chin level and my hands completely steady. Marcus apologized for interrupting, though he didn't look particularly sorry about it, more like a man used to interrupting things that needed interrupting. In the hallway, he explained quickly. Meridian was finalizing an acquisition that had stalled for 4 months. 3 senior consultants from 2 different firms had already walked away from the mess. Someone on his team had found a case study I'd published 6 months earlier and read it twice. Marcus himself had read it on a flight from London and thought, this person understands exactly what we're looking at. His team spent 2 weeks tracking me down, not because I was hidden, just because I'd never bothered with a big website or a publicist, only referrals and quiet results. Eventually, they reached one of my old clients, a manufacturing firm in Cincinnati, who answered with 4 words Marcus repeated to me right there in that hallway, words I will carry for the rest of my life. She does not fail. The contract was a formal engagement agreement, lead restructuring consultant on a major acquisition, aggressive timeline, and a compensation figure he stated as calmly as a weather report, more than my parents had ever collectively believed I was capable of earning in 3 years combined. He needed the signature that night because the acquisition window closed in 72 hours. I read every line right there in the hallway while he waited patiently. My brother's promotion dinner still murmuring behind the closed door. I pulled the pen I always carry from my blazer pocket, signed, and handed it back. He shook my hand, thanked me, and walked toward the elevator. I stood alone in that hallway for a moment, thick gold carpet under my feet, the city humming somewhere below, thinking about every dinner I'd sat through quietly, every comment I'd absorbed without answering, every time I'd accepted the far end of the table without argument. Then I opened the door and walked back in. Every face turned toward me. My mother wore an expression I'd genuinely never seen on her before. Something uncertain, unsure what posture to take. My father had both hands flat on the table. Daniel looked at me like a man quietly updating a long-held assumption. Rachel had set her wine glass down entirely. I sat back down at my seat by the window, picked up my fork, and in the silence that still hadn't fully recovered, my Aunt Carol, who'd never once asked about my career, leaned forward and asked quietly what exactly it was I did for work. I smiled, a real one, and I told her. I told all of them. For the first time, at a table of 19 people, I told them about the business I'd built from a single laptop and a stubborn refusal to believe quiet effort was the same thing as failure. I told them about the clients I'd stabilized, the messes I'd untangled, the companies still running, because someone had been willing to sit with their hardest problems and not flinch. I didn't perform it. I just told the truth about my own life clearly, without apology, the way I should have years earlier. My mother didn't apologize that night. I didn't expect her to. Apologies like that take longer than one dinner to arrive, and sometimes they never come at all. But something shifted in that room that couldn't be unshifted. Something in the way she touched my arm briefly in the parking lot afterward and said nothing, because she didn't need to. The acquisition took 11 weeks, the hardest and most precise work I'd ever done. Meridian closed it exactly on schedule. Marcus sent one line when it was finished. Exactly what I expected, and better. Within 4 months, 2 more referrals came through his network. I still sit near the window when I visit home. Old habits carry weight that doesn't disappear overnight. But I don't sit there anymore because I've accepted being background. I sit there because I like the light, and because I've finally learned the difference between humility and erasure.